Hello and welcome to the Planter Podcast, where we talk about veggie gardening and try to make it easier for you to grow food. I am one of your hosts, Peter Keefe, and I'm in Connecticut.
I'm Mylan Turner, an urban gardener here in Atlanta, Georgia.
And I'm Erin. I'm a market gardener in Huron County, Ontario, Canada.
All right. Uh, and we are currently in the midst of winter. So, Erin, talk about how much snow you have in Canada.
Feet and feet. It's unusual. Even for December, it's crazy. It feels like January, February. So if anything though, that's good motivation to start thinking about seed starting because this is the time to do it, right?
Yeah, there's nothing else to do outside, so time to get started inside. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we just got our first snow yesterday here, so yeah, today we're talking about seed starting, and Erin, you were talking about the first step for seed starting. What's the first step?
Well, technically, the first step before you start any seeds is actually to plan your garden. And I think we've, talked about that quite a bit, in the podcast and through our other social channels as well. Obviously, Planter is the perfect place to start planning your garden. But then the question becomes, how do you tie that garden plan in with your seed starting? So the two places that I like to check. So the first one is the garden summary. So if you click on your garden plan.
So, first I'm gonna create a copy for next year. So this is like an archive of my 2025 garden. We're gonna say like I'm just gonna assume. Wait, I did the wrong one. We're gonna do the home garden actually. Okay, okay. Try it one more time. I'm gonna make a 2026 home garden and open that up, and then in
Yep.
the
And
upper
then the
right,
garden
garden
summary.
summary. So sorry for all of our audio listeners, but we are looking in Planter at the garden summary, and it's like shows you the name of your garden, the size, the squares, and then what we're really most important looking at is the number of plants. So
Mm-hmm.
you got like if you just create a garden, it'll tell you exactly how many broccoli plants you need, cabbage, collards, and like what type of variety you have. So when you go down to your seed starting station or um, later on in the season when you go to buy plant starts, what you need to get.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
th-
And the
this is
cool
where
thing
you
is you can print this off as a PDF. So if you wanted, you could, literally physically print it, take it with you, or you could just pull up your phone at the store and check all the quantities and make sure you've got the right amounts.
So I've got a whole lot here. This is from last year. I'm going to make a few changes for this year, but we'll just assume, for the sake of this example, that we're just going to uh, go on with this. And then the next step is figuring out when to plant things, right? When to start things inside. So that's also where Planter comes in. You want to look at uh, the tasks. So it looks like for me at least, the first thing I would want to start inside is ginger. Actually, I don't actually want to start ginger this year because I tried last year. It did not work. I need to get special organic ginger that will actually grow, I think is the problem. But here we go. Moving on. So I'm gonna grow a whole bunch of perennial echinacea and onions this year. So it looks like I need to wait until February to start growing, uh, starting my seeds inside. So it might be earlier, it might be later for you. It does depend on the plants. And if you're growing something that you want to get like an even bigger head start on and you have the space inside, you could start earlier. But those plants are going to get bigger. And then you might be running out of shelf space, might be running out of grow light space. Yeah, so something to
And
keep in
speaking
mind.
from experience, you might be like, "Oh, that's not such a big deal," but it really does become a big deal. It's just at some point, unless you have really specialized lights and you're willing to pot things up and you've got, tons of space, it becomes very unwieldy. And it's actually worse to have a plant that's unhealthy that you transplant than a plant that's, you know, a little bit younger, right? So sometimes starting early really is of no advantage at all. You want to, you know, kind of time it in the optimal time range.
Yep. So yeah, another, wait, we should probably add the app back. Another cool feature within Planter that is super useful this time of year is the seed box. So this is my real seed box.
The
And it's
digital
very-
representation of this.
It's very nicely organized. It was not nicely organized when I was making the seed box feature, but so now I know, like, looking, I don't even have to go to the basement where I keep this. That's where my seed starting station is. So I don't need to go there and find this to know when I'm looking through seed catalogs what to buy. I could be like, oh yeah, I ran out of that seed last year, so I need to buy some more, or I'm fine. I don't need another packet of that, because we all know, like, that's a big problem for us veggie gardeners, is that we get a little addicted to buying those seed packets, and then before you know it, you have, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 things of broccoli seeds, and you don't need that many broccoli seeds. So
Yeah.
unless
Wait,
you're a
is 3 or
market
4 a lot? Is that a sign of trouble? Because I crossed 3 or 4 a long time ago.
gardener. Yeah. So
But I'm definitely a seed hoarder.
yeah. So how
Well,
about we go with Aaron? Aaron, what's sorry, go ahead.
well, the only other thing I was going to add, so one common question we get is, once we add the seeds to our seed box, how does that integrate with the rest of Planter? And the key thing is you can go into your plant list and you can actually filter for what's in your seed box. So that's kind of the way you can sort of constrain your garden planning and your thinking to say, okay, this is, you know, this is what I've got. So yeah, so that's the main kind of connection point between your seeds that you have and the plants that you can put in your garden plan.
Yep.
So it's a bit of a sort of back and forth relationship, because you can plan and then not have the seeds yet and then be like, okay, I have to go buy those seeds, or you can plan based on the seeds that you currently have. So you can kind of go either way.
And now's the time to plan, because you have plenty of time to start these seeds. If you order now or sometime around like the new year, you'll get your seeds. You'll have plenty of time. It should be good. They won't run out of stock, hopefully. Yeah. So when do you usually get your seeds starting, Aaron?
Well, starting, the vast majority of them is around mid-March. The only things that I would go a little bit earlier on would be onions. So onions, you know, some people go crazy early, like December, January, because they want, like,
I've done
biggest monsters possible.
I've done the January time frame. I think
How did that work out?
I got a good harvest that year. So
Nice.
And last year I started a little later than that, and I had a smaller harvest, and I'm not sure if that was the reason or if it was because I interplanted with peppers and the peppers grew like gangbusters and like shaded them a bit. So anyway, I'm not gonna really risk it this year. I'm probably gonna plant them like in between the 2 times, because I've got a record of it in Planter, so that's nice because I don't need to remember. And then I'm also not gonna intercrop it with peppers. I'm just gonna put a plain bed of onions and see how they do.
Yeah, so that's kind of the only, like, again, for a lot of the warm weather crops, it's kind of mid-March is really like the go time for, you know, the tomatoes and the peppers, you know, a little bit later maybe for some of the cucurbits. But yeah, that's really when things start to get running here.
Yep.
What about for you guys?
For me, I do things just a little bit differently, just because our winters are a tad bit warmer here in Atlanta. So my 2026 planting and seed starting actually has already started. So my garlic and my onions went in the ground in November. I did onion starts this time instead of onion seeds. And I don't grow a whole lot of onions, and I really only want one or two varieties. So there's some southern sweet onions that I really wanted to try. And so I just kind of interplanted those along the edges of beds or in places that I know that they can stay for that 8 to 9 months that they need to grow. I did do one dedicated garlic bed, but as far as the onions, that's what I did. It's just interplanted. So for me, as you can see, my seed starting station is already set up. I'm doing some stuff a little bit differently and doing some indoor gardening this year. So I'm doing some warm season stuff, mini tomatoes and peppers, and I'm doing a full herb garden. And the reason why I mentioned that is some of the slower, like the perennial herbs, if you're starting from seed, January is about the time that you'll want to start those because they're super slow to germinate. Things like rosemary, lavenders in that same family. Yep, thyme. What's the other one? Oregano.
Sage.
Sage. Yep. Those are super slow to germinate. So I like starting those indoors in January. Now, if
Mhm.
you really want to be efficient, all of those can be grown from cuttings, which I am also doing. But, we as gardeners like to do things sometimes just for the challenge. And growing those herbs is one of those that is for the challenge. So those I am starting in January. And as far as warm season crops, I am going to start my super hot peppers. I'm only going to do a couple of varieties, but I'm going to start those in January because they're another one that I've seen take 21 to 30 days just to germinate.
Mhm.
And then they're super slow growing in those early days. But I won't do my tomatoes and eggplants until 6 to 8 weeks before my predicted last frost because I ran into exactly what you're talking about. I did them earlier before, had nice, kind of sturdy looking, stalky plants indoors, but those struggled with the transition of moving outdoors. So I found having the ones that are a tad bit smaller, a little bit younger, transition a little bit faster and easier after they've been hardened off.
Mhm.
But
Yeah,
I found they don't transition as well when they're larger.
and trying to harden off big, leggy tomato plants. I had a little wheelie cart. I was wheeling my leggy tomato plants out. I learned the hard way. It's such a hassle.
Yep.
So if you can avoid going through that awkward transition, yeah, just do that.
Yep.
They'll be just fine. You'll get tomatoes about the same time anyway.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
tomatoes are for sure going to catch up. Peppers, I will push the limit a little
Yep.
bit more, just because peppers take so long, and I'm greedy. I want some peppers with that first round of tomatoes, so I may do those. Maybe one more. I'm sorry, the milder peppers, maybe one more month before the tomatoes, just because they're so slow growing.
And they're not as crazy. They're not as wild as tomatoes, too. If they're
No.
a little overgrown, it's not like they're crawling all over the
Yep.
place.
Mhm.
Yep.
So
And then one other thing I will do, I'm going to continue seed starting some cool season crops. I'd want to get a head start on another round of broccoli, cauliflower, some of the smaller cabbages, and then some of the other leafy greens. I will be doing some succession planting of those in January as well.
Hmm.
yeah, I think so. Now that we got the timing down, how do you start seeds? Is the question, and I think Mylan, you and I have some of the same gear. You see the colored pots behind Mylan. That's what I used to.
Yep.
I also got some big ones that I put tomatoes in after I up pot them, though I don't start them in this. Oh, okay. And then, like on the smaller side, you can get these 72 cell trays for good for like if you're just starting a whole bunch of them. This is an Airpoon tray from
Mhm.
Food Stamp Farmer, and comes with these like little. I'm trying to get it on the camera. These little slits that expose the roots to some air, keeps them from um, supposedly it keeps them from coiling up and choking themselves. I don't know how well it actually works, but it's been working okay for me. So, um, yeah. Mylan, how about you? What anything different that you use that I didn't show off?
So I do have the same 72 cells that you have, but if you're a small urban gardener, you might not want to grow quite as many. Now, one thing you can do is do Peter, hold yours up one more
Yeah.
time. So you might want to go down the short row. I think that is 6 seedlings, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, 6.
Yep. So what I like to use sometimes, if it's something I really like, I'll do trays of those. But on a smaller scale, I use these. So this is 6, right? And so what I can do is take these and put them in these 6 cell, um, 6 cell trays is what they're called. I can do these in more of a modular version, and they fit in the same 1020 trays as all the other standard size trays. So with this, I can either do the same plant, so 6 of the same, or any multiple of that, but you want to make sure that you do stuff that is going to germinate very close to the same time. And that's kind of the challenge that I ran into with the 72 cell. Um, my garden isn't big enough to do 72
Mhm.
of
Yeah.
anything. Lettuces, maybe
I
greens.
actually rarely do 72 of the same thing. I'll put like a little, one of these
Yep.
one of these labels. I'll put it
Yep.
like right here, and then do 6 of the same,
Hmm.
and then maybe 12 of the same thing,
Hmm.
and then just go on from there and have like a few things. The problem with that is you need to make sure that everything in the tray needs heat or no heat to
Hmm.
germinate, and so sometimes I've been bitten by that where I accidentally like mix in something like the cilantro that
Hmm.
apparently does not like heat. It won't germinate. So
Yep.
yeah.
A lot of the lettuces are the same way. So you can see in my setup behind me, this tray right here is actually on a heat mat. For those watching, you can see that tray is a little bit shorter than this one. So this one does not need heat. And I had some seedlings that germinated and they got a little leggy. So I'm propping those up to be just a little bit closer to the light.
Mm.
But anything that actually could germinate, I'm sorry, could benefit from heat, I went ahead and popped out the individual pots off the heat mat as soon as the seed sprout and gets it to the light and away from the heat mat. So that's why I love, the modular seed starting
Mhm.
sections. And this isn't sponsored by Bootstrap Farmer, but we are
Yeah.
huge fans of the equipment, and
High
it
quality
really
for sure.
scales. Yeah, it's very high quality and it scales. You can buy one set of things and use multiple types of equipment in it.
Yeah, it's great because it's like pretty much unbreakable. I don't think anything I've bought from them has broken so far, and it only slightly fades too. It's pretty fade resistant. I've left them outside for the whole season.
Yeah, I don't baby mine. Mine lives
Nope.
outside,
Yep.
aside from this equipment.
Mhm.
But I would just say, reminder to, as you're grouping and you're using stuff like that, stick with similar plant families. So if any tray, system that you have, keep your nightshades together. If you're doing leafy greens, keep those together. You want them to start off with the similar conditions that they need, and that will impact the long term health of your plants.
Mhm. Cool.
Aaron, how about you?
Yeah, I
What
guess
do
I'm
you
done.
like? You
I'm the
are
odd one in the group.
yeah.
So I mostly do soil blocking for the last few years. I really enjoy soil blocking. It is a pretty significant learning curve, I would say, in terms of getting the mix right and the technique and things like that. And it is more labor intensive up front. But I really enjoy it. And I do find at volume, it can be helpful because, I don't have to have a tray for I can use the same standard trays over and over and over. And I can, either do the tiny blocks or the larger blocks. So, I really enjoy it. It does have the same air pruning benefits as the wind strip trays, so that can help just make a healthier seedling that'll transplant a bit better. And also, it does buy you that little bit of extra time if you're like, oh, I was gonna put it out this week, but now it's delayed until next week. It gives you a little bit of play there that you might not have in the traditional standard plug trays. So that's really good. So I just have 2 handheld blockers. So one does the, 20 mini blocks, and then one does the 4, I can't remember what the dimensions are, but the 4 larger blocks that you can basically pop the mini blocks into when you want to pot them up. So yeah, I really enjoy that. And
sorry to interrupt, Erin, but like anyone that's listening and has no idea what soil blocking is, can you real quickly say what is it? Because
sure. So it's basically literally making compacted blocks of soil. So your mix is a little bit different because you need it to stick together. So it's, a little bit denser, and you definitely want to start with it wetter than you would if you were just filling a tray. So that's kind of what gives you the stick to keep the block together. So then when you put the tool, the blocker, into this sort of kind of wet, pasty mix and press it down, it actually creates these, semi-compacted, but not too compacted blocks that retain their form without, having a tray to encapsulate them.
And I like to think of it like it's kind of like making a snowball, but with soil, and it's cube shaped instead of
absolutely. And actually, I have seen growers do that, where to pot up, instead of using larger blockers, they'll literally make basically a snowball out of their potting mix, and then just put the little tiny seedling. They'll have just a little indentation and put it into the snowball. So that's one way to do it. So, and then in terms of sorry.
For those that are new to soil blocking, Erin, would you mind just kind of going over what are some of the key ingredients to a soil blocking mix?
Sure. So you typically want something either like peat or coconut coir. So that kind of gives the structure and the fibrousness that will help to hold the blocks together. The main thing is if you're working with peat product, you probably want to sift it unless you've got like a really top quality professional grade peat, because it does come with a lot of sticks and bits that you do not want in any seed starting mix, regardless of whether you're blocking or not blocking. If you have chunks in your starting mix, and we'll talk more about starting mix later, but it's not going to be good for holding your blocks together, and it's not going to be good for your little seedlings to run into. So sifted peat or coconut coir. Then some kind of a compost component. So that helps give some fertility, retain some of the moisture. So I typically just used a bagged store-bought compost. If you have your own compost, you could potentially use that as well if it's very well broken down. I've also used vermicompost, even though it's not technically a compost. It kind of serves the same, purpose with adding some of the fertility. And then some recipes call for perlite. I'm not a huge fan of perlite if I can avoid it for blocking, but it gives a little bit of aeration. Or vermiculite, which also helps a little bit with aeration and moisture retention. But you don't want those to be a huge proportion of your mix, because again, the key is you need it to hold together. So if it's too kind of crumbly, it'll just fall apart. Then after those components, there's recipes you see online that call for really specialized ingredients like green sand and rock dust. And I personally haven't used those, haven't tried to source those. But those are your base components, are either a peat or a coir, compost, and then maybe a little bit of either perlite or vermiculite. So, yeah. And then in terms of my trays, Right now, I have very cheap trays. I actually get them from the dollar store, and they're not of the quality of Bootstock Farmer at all.
Yeah.
But the reason I love them is because of the dimensions. So they fit my grow racks perfectly, and they fit each combination of soil blocks perfectly. So I'm completely maximizing the space, both within my racks and under my lights, and within each tray itself. So that's why I love them. So, but they are flimsy. So that's the downside, is they
And
do
you're
break and they
growing
need.
you're growing so much, like it would cost a fortune to get everything like premium quality from Bootstrap Farmer. And it,
I mean, if
I th-
I found something that was the exact right dimensions, but it was higher quality, I would for sure
oh, okay.
go for that. But I haven't quite found that yet. So
Yeah, mine are
for
kind of
now, it's a
awkward on the
good.
shelves too. So like what dimensions are your is your growing station?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know I can fit 3 trays side
Hmm.
by side, and they fit perfectly both widthwise and lengthwise. And then the smaller blocks, I can fit, I think it's 4 rows of 2. I think it works out to 160 smaller blocks in a tray, and then
Okay.
20 larger blocks, if I remember correctly. So it's also really nice numbers for working with, for planning purposes and for transitioning, like 160 to 20. Then you can just kind of divide it out by the number of trays.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's what I like. It's super space efficient. So that works out well. And then Mylan, I was actually kind of giggling when you were showing how you were raising up your trays, because I do the same thing. Like, even though my lights have the little clips like yours do, I more often than not will just raise individual trays towards the light, because I find it's easier, and
Yeah.
you might only need one tray to be up that close. So yeah, so that's definitely a good trick to, put stack trays on top of each other to get them closer to the light.
Or if
And
you're
so
like
what?
me,
Yep.
I just shove some 2x4s scraps under there.
I've used 2x4s. I've used books. This year I'm using the trays since I had a few extra. But like Aaron was saying, my lights are adjustable. In those earlier stages, you want your lights to be anywhere from 4 to you want your lights to be a maximum of 4 to 6 inches away from the seedlings when they initially sprout. So my first set of lettuces that I did, I was traveling and I just planted seeds and I got my timing off. I thought they would be just sprouting when I got back, but they actually sprouted. It looked like maybe the day that I left. So I came home to really leggy lettuce seedlings, even though my lights were relatively low. But I found that they were initially maybe 8 to 12 inches away. And I found indoors, if you're not using professional lights, you need to be even closer. So, like I said, 4, maximum of 6 inches away. And that's where I just use whatever I have laying around to move them up. But the tray needs can be variable. So that's where you do that.
So this is another feature in Planter. Sorry, this is not like just advertisement for Planter. This is a new one that I added last summer. Oh, I'm adding a note by accident. Okay, there's the light sensor. So like here in my room, in my office, it's 30. Not really good. If I put my hand over the camera, it goes down to 0. If I turn on this light next to me, I can get it up to like 11,000, 16,000. That doesn't tell the whole story though, but you can use this to to get a glimpse of how good your lights are. If you put this light sensor out by a sunny window, it'll go way up. The quality of sunlight is amazing. But like yeah, you need to keep in mind the color temperature of the light. This little light I had is very yellow. It's not gonna grow plants very well. So you need to make sure it's something around like 6,000 Kelvin, um, or even some of them are like they show up as just like a reddish blue, purplish blue. Um, so definitely like look into the quality of the lights. The putting it on a windowsill oh, is a great strategy for if you're just getting started and you don't want to invest a lot and you have a sunny window. Just keep it simple. Just do that. If you don't have a sunny window, you'll find that the seeds will just they'll get really tall, and then they'll flop over because they're trying to reach the sun, and always just looking for more sunlight, and then they'll never get there. So, um, if you do want to look into better lights, we do have a blog post about all about that, and there's just a ton of good quality lights out there. Also, a ton of bad quality lights. So just do your research. Make sure you usually get what you pay for. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyone
and I think,
have any? Go ahead.
well, like to your point, you can definitely start in a window, but that's one of the, I would say if you're really serious about, seed starting, and seed starting can be a great way to save money as a gardener. So if you're really serious about starting your own transplants, that's probably one of the biggest game changers is transitioning from, just trying to grow things in windowsills to getting, even just one high, reasonably high quality grow light. It doesn't have to be the, super top of the line. Even kind of a mid-range light will just take your seed starting game up, to the next level.
And like Mylan was saying, keeping it close to the plants. These LEDs, the modern LEDs, are they run so cool that you could have them nearly touching the leaves, and it should be fine. Um, if you have a really really high powerful one, maybe you want to keep it a little further away. But like if you want to save some money, get like the mid tier grow light. You're probably not going to be burning your leaves if you put it too close. So probably better close than too far. So yeah.
In my case, I am running kind of a hybrid approach. I'm using the LED shop lights, but these were some that were available in one of the big box stores a few years ago. They actually were incredibly cheap. They were only about $25 per light. But what stood out is exactly what Peter said. These are 5600 Kelvin. That's what you're going to see typically what's called daylight rated inside the house. So they won't be the best for growing for fruiting plants indoors, but they're great for seed starting. You will see kind of what Peter was referencing. If you have any that are on the edge, not getting exposed to light, they will lean toward the light. It's another benefit to having trays or modular systems. If you see that, you can just rotate the tray or rotate the pot, and that'll make up for any light that is missing.
It's like baking cookies in the oven. You want to, flip the racks and stuff. Same thing with growing seedlings. You gotta make sure they all get the same amount of light.
Find that balance. Yep.
Maybe every week or so, rotate them or maybe every time you water them.
When you water.
Yeah. And speaking of watering, there's a lot of different techniques to watering. And Aaron, I think you are stuck doing bottom watering and only bottom watering, right?
Actually, I do top water very gently. I actually use a mister. And I find that works quite well. Yeah, a lot of times traditionally with the soil blocking, so you'll have two sort of plastic trays. One will be, it'll kind of have like a grate on the bottom, and then the other one will contain the water. So that's a very traditional way with soil blocking, is just to, fill up the bottom tray and let it absorb. I really like misting. I don't mind doing it multiple times a day, just to keep that, kind of ideal moisture level, because with soil blocks, you really don't, with seedlings in general, you really don't want them to dry out. They're very sensitive to drying out. But with soil blocking in particular, if your soil block dries out, that can also kind of affect the integrity, and it can be very hard to rehydrate, and it might kind of, fall apart. So I really like misting, and I started with a handheld mister, and now I actually use a giant, it's like a garden sprayer, but I just use it for water, and I just mist the entire tray. And I find that works that
So
just helps me keep a really nice balance of not overwatering, not underwatering, and
so you don't do
um,
any bottom watering at all. You just do the
not
misting.
not typically, no. And there's a lot of benefits to bottom watering, but I don't typically. No, I have tried it in the past,
Uh-huh.
and
And do you
it's
just do this every day, every couple days? How often are you out there misting it?
with the misting, especially when they're small, at least a couple times a day. But that's fine because I like to check on them anyway. So it's kind of a win-win. Like you're watering, but you're also paying attention to all those little things, right? Like, oh, do I need to adjust my lights? Or, does this
Hmm.
tray need to move? Or, do these seedlings look like they're yellowing and they need a little bit more fertilizer? So for me, I don't mind that interaction. It doesn't, even though I have a lot of trays, it doesn't take, too long to get through that. So
Yeah. Well, okay. I guess I was totally wrong about what you did. I do the bottom watering
well,
technique,
that is the
but now
traditional.
now I'm thinking maybe I should try this misting technique. So like a bottom watering, you have your oh gosh, so much stuff here. You got your little cups with the seeds, and you put them in. This is like a little holder to keep it nice and organized, but they have holes in the bottom. Then you have something that does not have holes that catches the water, and you just keep water line up to maybe like here or so, and then the soil soaks it up like a sponge and keeps the roots moist. So, and that usually works for me, and especially when I'm just starting, I also have one of those covers on it to keep everything moist. Um, and then unlike you, I just set it and forget it for about a week or so until it germinates, and then once it germinates, I remove the cover and let some more fresh air go in there. But yeah, how about you, Mylon?
I also do bottom watering. Exact same technique as what Peter just described. I fill up the bottom to about a quarter inch of water, let it all soak. I actually start that even in the seed starting process. So, in order for my individual pots to be hydrated enough, I soak them first before I even plant the seed. Make sure the moisture is getting all the way up to the top. Then plant my seed um, and cover for a few days, especially the warm crops. I find they benefit from being covered. Um, then from there, those early stages, I will mist anything that's really slow to germinate, just over the top, like what Aaron described. And then once they sprout, once they get to this size, especially once the true leaves are in, I bottom water only. And because I actually, I am still working and everything and doing other things, I can't be quite as hands on to where I can miss multiple times a day. So
Mhm.
what I find is I can bottom water 2, maybe 3 times a week, just depending on the indoor temps. And the way that I find easiest to check whether or not my seedlings need water is to literally just pick up a pot. As you get experience, you'll get to learn kind of what the weight of the pot should be. Now, you can't do this with soil blocking because you don't want to handle them too much. But for the pots or the 6L trays, you'll learn, kind of what a dry one feels like and what a damp one feels like. And so I just monitor that and the top layer of the soil. I don't want this soggy, just slightly moist. Like I said, not soggy, not overly wet. That's where you'll see problems with like your fungus gnats and stuff like that. Once they sprout, it's okay for that top level to dry to the point of a very, very gentle crust. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of bottom watering. I kind of learn as the plants grow how to modify how much water I'm adding to the tray, but I just add just enough for it to soak up into all the pots. There'll be just a very, very fine amount of water at the bottom just kind of in between those grooves. And then once the tray dries out completely, that's typically the sign that it's time to bottom water again.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then one other thing to keep in mind. So the reason why none of us have really talked about top watering, so literally, spraying water over the top, it can be done. It's a perfectly acceptable method, but there are some risks. So there's definitely a risk of overwatering more easily, especially if you don't have anywhere for that water to go. And then the other thing is especially with tiny seeds and young seedlings that are right at the surface of the soil, if you're top watering and that stream is too harsh, it's very easy to jostle those seeds around, and they'll get out of position, they might not germinate. So that's some of the risk. Again, it can certainly be done, especially if you use either a hose end sprayer with a very gentle setting, or some other kind of watering can that has a very fine spray. But just be careful if you are top watering, just not to overwater and not to, jostle things too much.
I'm the king of overwatering, and that's why transitioning to bottom watering was better for me.
Yep. I'm the king of forgetting to water, so I just do the bottom water. I don't know how you do it multiple times a day, but like I'm tempted to try that.
Have you germinated yet? Have you germinated yet?
I have such a hard time growing peppers, and I think it's because I overwater them. So maybe I'll try what you do, and or maybe I'll do what Mylan does and just put a little in the bottom, because I think they're a little bit more susceptible to overwatering.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That and temperature. If you overwater, it tends to not allow the soil temps to get to what they need to be. And plant families, you'd have to look at the needs. The plant family kind of determines what the crops like best as far as soil temp. So just for example, tomatoes and peppers, these want to be somewhere in the 80s, at that germination state. So that's why I put these on a heat mat. And one challenge is these bigger pots like this. So this is a roughly 3-inch pot. It's a little bit harder to get pots this size up to temperature as opposed to these smaller ones. And that is also another area where I think Erin has an advantage with the soil blocking, because her blocks are a tad bit smaller, so you can get those warmed up much better than, like I say, the larger pots. And so that's what I found. But when they're too wet, too moist, they're cooler. And so that soil isn't getting to where it needs to be. You can use something, you might be able to see it just over here. I do have a soil probe and a soil thermometer to monitor those temperatures. None of that's necessary. I am a nerd who likes gadgets, and that's why I have all this stuff. You can be extremely successful without any of this. These are just the things that I like because I'm obsessive like that.
Yeah, it's good disclaimer there. Yeah, you could make this very simple. Some people, if you're trying to germinate something, you put it on top of the refrigerator. Usually it's a little warmer. That works just fine. Actually, the only peppers that I had success with last year, I did not have any of the fancy gear. I just took some snack pepper seeds from the grocery store and then put them in a takeout container that had some soil in it. Put a little bit of water. I was like, well, maybe this will work. And I forgot about it for a week. So, and then they sprouted just fine. So, yeah. Sometimes I think with the gadgets, we can overdo it.
100%. 100%.
Simpler is better sometimes.
Aluminum trays, like Peter said, the takeout trays, they work fantastic. Repurpose that stuff. Those can be a little bit more challenging when it gets into the part of this season when you're having to transport stuff indoors and outdoors for the hardening off. That's where I invested into the heavier duty trays because I was starting to grow at more volume. But if you're just starting out, look in the cabinet, look in your pantry for what you already have, and 9 times out of 10, you've got enough equipment to get started.
Mhm.
For sure.
Now, we talked a little bit about soil with Aaron and the soil blocking, but is there any specific soil composition that you like, Mylan, for your seed starting mix?
Yes. So when growing indoors, you're going to hear use seed starting mix. If you're just starting out, that's a bag that you can buy from the grocery store. The benefit to it is that it's going to be largely insect free. And that's really the number one advantage of buying a pre made mix. Now, the one thing that I don't like about a lot of them is that they are completely devoid of all nutrients. And once your seedlings get to about this size, when you start to see the true leaves, they're going to be needing nutrition. And then you're going to have to start getting into liquid fertilizer and getting the right ratio for seedlings, the younger plants, so that you don't get what's called fertilizer burn. That is where too much salt gets absorbed by the plant, the leaves dry out and they burn out. So what I've done is I use a method that Peter mentioned earlier. I buy indoor potting mix that already has a gentle fertilizer in it. And Aaron mentioned it, sifted. So I've got a mesh tray that I sift out the bigger chunks and little twigs and bark that you'll see in some of those mixes. And I start my seeds in that. And I found that I'm getting sturdier, stocky seedlings because they do have exposure to a very gentle fertilizer as soon as they sprout. That is probably enough that will get them to where they can be transplanted outdoors, or in cases like these where I'm going to be growing these indoors only, I can get 6 to 8 weeks of growth out of the fertilizer that's already in, and then use a much lighter dose. I'm talking quarter, half strength of the liquid fertilizer as opposed to what I'd use outside.
Yep, I do very much the same thing. I just a plain old cheap bag of potting soil. As long as if it doesn't have big chunks, it's good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you make your own, right? You make a.
Yeah, I do. Last year I tried to kind of get away from that and just buy big bales of professional mix without any fertilizer. But I did find I was always playing catch up with the fertility, to Mylan's point, without having that compost component. And the structure on the soil block, it was enough to hold together, but it wasn't as good as it could have been. But I was just trying to save time with doing things at, a larger scale. This year my dad bought a cement mixer, so I might try mixing the compost with the growing medium in the cement mixer, see how that goes. But it is interesting. Like, even though the seed has enough nutrition for the seedling to get up and going until those first true leaves show up, it's pretty surprising how quick they're going to need nutrients and how quick they're going to show deficiency if there isn't something somehow, whether it's vermicast, compost, slow release granulate, whatever it is. If it's not there pretty soon out of the gate, you'll be playing catch up for sure. So so that is definitely one thing to keep in mind. But yeah, again, other than managing the fertility in the mix, the sifting is really, really the key. And the other piece that I'm kind of playing around with. So when I was just seed starting at home, I like to sterilize my mix because I'm making it myself. So that can help control fungus gnats, and that can help control, some of the diseases related to damping off.
How do you sterilize it?
So I've tried two methods. There's 3 that I'm aware of. So there's the boiling water method. So you put your mix in a big sturdy tote, boil a bunch of water, and then really soak it well with the boiling water. So that's one way. That was my preferred method. Another method is to bake it. So you can lay it out on a cookie sheet and bake it.
That
That's
sounds
very
messy.
stinky, and
Yeah.
you can't, for me, I couldn't do as big of a volume. So I was like, no, thanks. And then I've heard of people microwaving, and that's supposed to be quite efficient. I have not tried it.
That probably also stinks. It's like cooking fish in a microwave.
So for me, if you're gonna go that route of, you know, making your own mix, I would suggest doing the boiling water, and that really helps control fungus gnats and disease issues, other than the cultural practices that Mylan mentioned as well, in terms of, you know, managing the airflow and the water levels, the moisture levels.
I'm just picturing me, you know, my wife comes home and says, "Oh, what you making?" Dirt, just dirt.
Those aren't brownies.
Yeah, it's you know, it's an experience.
Yeah.
Some of those I think are hacks that are only popular because of the internet. I just don't think people before that would have been putting potting soil in the microwave. So let's go ahead and kill that one. You don't need to do that.
Yeah.
Hot water
sure.
if you need to, and let's leave that there.
Yeah.
I did find the sterilization was helpful. Like, I have definitely had issues with fungus gnats. And again, it's like, when you think about it, when you're buying, you know, the bag peat and the bag compost, that's all kind of just sitting outside at the store, and they don't really do too much to kill off any eggs or creepy crawlies and things. So I did find it quite helpful with the fungus gnats, but definitely the boiling water was infinitely easier.
Yeah. And then once you get fungus gnats, it's really hard to get rid of them. I know I've heard of these mosquito bites that you can put in the
Yes.
like the bottom water, and that
Mhm.
supposedly gets rid of them. But then I do wonder, you know, it's like a chemical, so you're like kind of questioning, like, what am I doing with the plant, with the food safety? I don't know.
So it's actually a
Actually-
bacteria.
BT.
Yeah,
Is it?
it is BT. So I've
Why did I
actually
bring it up?
used this method.
Yes.
And what I'll do is, like you said, you put the dump down in the bottom watering tray, or I'll make a BT tea. So you take the granulars, put them in a really, really fine bag or something where you can now dump that into the warm water, let that soak through, let it cool, and then use that to water your seedlings and your plants. And what happens is that will kill any larva or immature insects. It does not kill the ones that are already flying around, but it will take care of anything that's in the soil. And I found that one to be really effective. Knock wood, I have not had to do it this year, but I have had extreme success with that in the past.
It's super effective, and that's what I used preventatively this year as well, was the mosquito dunks. I did kind of the tea, like you were saying, Mylan, and then I had a few yellow sticky traps just for an extra layer of protection, so you're catching some of the adults while you're kind of targeting, you know, any babies, and that really seemed to keep them at bay. And for anyone who doesn't know, fungus gnats are these little tiny, super teeny tiny black flies that start buzzing around your soil. And they feed on the organic compounds in your soil, but they can also feed on your seedling roots. For adult plants, it doesn't typically matter, but for seedlings, fungus gnats can just eat the daylights out of them, and they won't.
And they're just annoying when you lift up like a lid of seedlings, and all these gnats fly at you.
No. That's the number one way to get your spouse mad at you.
Yeah.
Starting seeds indoors.
A fungus gnat infestation.
Even worse than baking dirt.
Baking dirt. Relationship 101 here.
Yeah.
Love and gardening, right?
All right. So I think we've covered everything. Mylan, did you want to talk a little bit about your winter gardens that you got going on there?
So outdoors, we got a question mark going. We got some of Erin's winter wind. So we're down at 18 degrees Fahrenheit today. I need her to come and get that because I don't like that. It's way too cold out.
Sorry.
And Unfortunately, I had a super busy weekend. I did not get to cover the garden this time.
Oh,
So we are fingers crossed. Everything that I have planted is frost tolerant, but 18 degrees and high winds are just not a fun combination. If things don't work out, I'm going to go back to what we talked about, seed starting succession rounds of my cool season crops. But like I mentioned earlier, if that doesn't work out, I've got my warm season babies growing. So I'm doing several varieties of miniature tomatoes, peppers, miniature cucumbers, and I've got an entire tray of grocery store herbs. So I just bought one variety of each herb, one type of each herb. When you get them from the grocery store, they're packed in, they look so full and so lush. But if you keep them that way, in anywhere in about a week, they're going to look horrible. So what I did was get those and divide them out. One plant at the grocery store will divide out maybe 3 or 4 times. So I transitioned to multiples of the 2.5 to 3 inch pots, like what Peter had as well. And that's given me a full tray of just beautiful culinary herbs that I'm going to grow indoors over winter. And then once we're about 4 weeks before my last frost, I'll start transitioning those perennial herbs that I was growing indoors, outdoors for the rest of the year.
sounds great.
Mm.
And if anyone wants to follow along with Mylan's growing, you are on Instagram at ATL Grow and all the other socials too, right?
All the other socials, yep.
Yeah. So definitely check them out. A lot of good pictures there, a lot of good videos. So, you know, always interesting to see what you got going on. And yeah.
That's the
And
problem with not having enough indoor hobbies. I start bringing my outdoor hobbies indoors.
yep, yep. Like all of us, like it was probably last month. I was like, okay, I'm ready for a break from gardening, and now I'm like, I'm ready to go again. So,
Yep, yep.
yeah,
You just need to have something green and growing around you no matter what.
yep.
It's
All
a good
right.
time of year
Yeah,
to experiment too, because if you fail, you still have time.
Plenty of time, yep.
that is true. Yeah, you can always start again,
Mhm.
and it's just like another month or so if they don't germinate or whatever. So. I think that's where we should end the podcast. As usual, if you have any questions for us, please email us at question@planter.garden. We'd be happy to answer them on the show. And until then, we hope that you've enjoyed the podcast. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and all that stuff. I'm trying to play the outro music. Where is it? There we go. And it goes. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Bye, everyone.